it's answered. And it's speaking and hearing all of the public concerns. I have a few concerns myself of how this is going to take place in 2017. And I understand a lot more now why it should be answered. The questions that I did of elements quite interesting, and they maybe should be fully explained. And the public's concern, the residents here, should really be listened to a lot further. And there is the deadline of 2046.
What's that?
2040 is the deadline?
Well, we have to vote on the 19th. The 19th is our deadline.
Our deadline. So you don't have a deadline for what else has to happen after that in case they have more and more discussion.
Well, I mean, Lorraine, it'll continue. The task, let me say this, the Roosevelt ballot, the Cornell Technion Task Force will remain after the vote, okay? And we're going to continue to work on whatever issues that are important to residents. Okay, that's
my concern, that they don't get ignored.
That's the question to me.
They live here.
Right.
So it's very
Yeah, and actually, I'll just let Cornell respond to that also, that in this, what happens after this process from your perspective.
This process started long before the Euler process and will continue long after. I mean, we're here to stay. I think we have a great relationship with the community, and every meeting we have, I think we clarify things. We're not going to have all the answers by next week. We're not going to have all the answers by the 24th. What we're committed to is being as open and honest as we can and continuing to work with people and hearing their concerns and doing whatever we can to allay them.
Okay. All right. We'll go, who hasn't spoken yet? Everybody's spoken? All right. We'll go work our way over. Elizabeth, go ahead.
All I was going to do is request that the representatives from Cornell, who have been so very helpful, they've heard everything that was said tonight, and in order to expedite whatever we're up to next week, they would address those questions that are open in writing, and that we get email copies.
Yeah, you have, now there were certain questions.
That was before.
Yeah, but you're saying additional questions?
But anything additional that was raised tonight, or
Yeah.
questions or something, if you could briefly comment or respond to what was raised tonight in writing, in outline.
We will certainly go back through the questions from tonight. We did prepare a very extensive response, about 40 pages, I think. And I think that covered everything I recall hearing tonight, but there may be still some ambiguity on some of our answers more than new questions. So we'll go back through it.
Yeah, and clarify, because I don't.
Yeah. So that's a request. Just to clarify, any in terms of the questions that were raised, if you can clarify your response on that, that would be great. Michelle.
I just want to go back to the parking situation for one reason. Both Cornell and certain members of the community board have opinions about this, very valid, based on some philosophical literature, whether or not it's proven in reality. I haven't seen any studies or overseas studies that if you don't fill the spots, then they won't come. However, I just wanted to point out and reiterate that we're representing the community. And if my recollection serves me, the woman who is representing 32 or 35 organizations on this island, I believe they requested the 500 spots. So that's correct. Okay, that's being affirmed by our planners over there. So to that end, I don't think that the board and Cornell should be having an ultra-philosophical conversation since it's one of the major issues for the community, and I think we should take that into consideration, and certainly as the resolution is written, we should consider that.
Larry.
A couple of things in response to Michelle. It's one of the issues that the committee had mixed feelings about, and I think you've heard what the community has said today, and I think it'll certainly be mentioned in the resolution or the report that we come up with. Second thing is mostly for the community, and that is that just to remind them that community board's action is advisory, and after we vote, our recommendations go to the City Planning Commission and the Borough President. The Borough President will have 30 days, and then the City Planning Commission will be holding a hearing on it. Based on the fact that we're not voting tonight, I think that my suspicion is that the public hearing at City Planning Commission will be their first meeting in February. I think it's the feeling, and certainly among some of the committee members, to go and testify on behalf of the board at that public hearing, and as Nick said, to continue working after it goes through ULURP and as it gets into construction.
Right, and it's Larry's right, and this is it's a process, right? So that again, it tells you why we are under a clock that we need to
Point of
adhere to.
information.
Yeah.
During many of those meetings, the public is invited to come and testify.
The public's invited to every single meeting we have. They're invited to
No, I don't
every
mean
meeting.
hours, I mean the whole.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I
Sure.
think the public, they should know that.
She's talking about the other meetings following as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Jane.
First of all, I think Jeffrey and Larry are really carried the ball for the committee. I attended 3 separate committee meetings. The public spoke extensively at all 3 of those meetings. It was amazing how long the meetings lasted, how much patience everybody had to listen to everybody. So I'm hoping that next Wednesday, that's why I brought up our agenda and all the public officials speak, that we will not have another public hearing. I know these issues are very important. Roosevelt Island is going to be affected forever by this huge project that's coming in. But I really don't think we need to have another sort of semi-public hearing even during the public session. Thank you.
Okay. You want to speak? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I actually had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I did have.
Okay, go ahead.
So I know that Cornell is not taxed, doesn't pay taxes, but what about the corporate co-location? There are going to be, apparently there are going to be the buildings that have businesses in them, and there's going to be private developers, from what I understand, that are buildings, not Cornell. So they're going to be paying taxes, is that part of the landlord tax?
So currently, the way that the arrangement with this, the agreement with the city is, if a private developer built those buildings, there will be tax on those buildings. That's right.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions of board members? Yes. Lawrence. Yep.
Just going back to the parking issue again, and also the fact that there are obviously going to be large groups of conferences and whatnot coming to the island. Other than the parking, what other solutions could there be if you keep the parking down? To bring people over here as opposed to right now, the subway and
Absolutely. Public transportation, certainly. There will be some transit from airports, people coming in from airports. They would take cabs, people on the island do now car services. But the idea is not to have a lot of residents and more permanent people always planning on having cars there. That, having a permanent parking space there, I think lends people to saying, I'm going to have a car.
then how are you going to be handling these as people coming? I mean, just saying transportation from the airport or
Transportation would be like any place else in the city. It would be a combination of public transportation and publicly available transportation.
Is the transportation now sufficient? On the island? So then how are you going to handle so many more people living on the island?
Let me talk about a few things. One is that the residence is on the campus. One of the key issues about having people live on the campus, a very large percentage of the people who work and students will be on the campus, will be living on the campus. So that reduces the number of people who will be taking public transportation. That's point number one. Point number two is that a lot of the commuters who will be coming, let's say, to work at the corporate co-location would be coming against the tide of the typical rush hour traffic. In other words, they'd be coming from Manhattan to Roosevelt Island rather than from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, as is the typical path of travel during rush hour. And a third point that I would make is,
We're a good tag team. The third point I was going to make is that students and universities tend to have very off-peak hours. Is that your third point? So they tend to have very off-peak hours, so the impact on public transportation is very different than you would get in a more kind of traditional office environment.
oh, I'm sorry, my last last point goes back to an issue that I raised earlier on, which is that the EIS does not look at the population of Goldwater Hospital as existent right now. So when Goldwater is no longer at the site, the residential and working population of the island goes down by 2,000 people. And so we believe that there's additional capacity that gets opened up there.
Right, I guess the question was, the way I understood Lawrence's question is that there's not significant transportation now that serves this island. And so you're gonna have a lot of people, right, that are gonna be coming onto the island. They're gonna wanna get on and off the island. Are there any other things that you're looking at? It could be shuttle bus, we don't know. Right, the ferry, whatever. I mean, that's the question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. We've also committed, as part of the letter that we have written, we have also committed to studying the issue, and I believe somebody raised it here tonight, of pedestrian and cycle elevators to the Queensboro Bridge. So we are looking at options that are sort of out of the box, thinking about how to increase public transportation and options to the island.
Okay. Yes, Alan.
So I am not a real estate expert, and I think there are real estate experts here in the room who can frame this question better than me, but let me see if I can try it, okay? So Cornell is getting the land for free from the city, and in return it's developing a school. The school is going to have corporate co-location, which is going to have corporate entities that are going to be making money from this land. So this land is now, here's where I'm struggling for the question. The land is given to this corporate co-location building developer for free. Who gets the money from this land? Is that developer going to be paying the city of New York for that land?
Yeah, we already talked about the taxes. This is a really, even, you're right, Cornell is getting this land for free, but it's still a significantly expensive and challenging project to build. And so there are huge infrastructure investments we have to make. There are huge construction investments we have to make. You know, we're doing things like bringing gas onto the island. So there are just significant investments. So it's a very expensive project. So it's not like there's all this extra money here. As I mentioned earlier, we're working very hard in a very challenging situation to see if some of the buildings we're talking about are even feasible early on. It's an untested market to build a residential building, for example, and it, you know, it's a less than traditional environment. So it's challenging.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go Patrick, Larry, and then Jeffrey. Yes, Patrick. Yep.
That takes me back, quite frankly, to the Riots played in this. Money around here comes through from Riot. They're responsible for the money in and out. I don't think there's any islander alive or dead who believes that that has been administered correctly. Because it is a state of New York corporation overlooking the city and God knows who else. So I must admit I'm a little suspicious about a lot of this stuff. But I also say that I think what Cornell has done is a superb job trying to answer a billion questions that we haven't even started to bring up yet. And that is going on to Cornell, which is probably better than the state or the city, or Rio, for that matter. They seem to have integrity that seems lacking somewhat around here. So let me say that, and what's the old word? Keep your eyes out.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Yes? Larry?
Nice week to talk. And this question about real estate taxes. City is going to dispose of the property. Ultimately, it's going to be disposed by at least potential option to go to Cornell. Cornell is not going to be any monetary transfer for that real estate deal. And Cornell has indicated you will not, as an not-for-profit, be paying real estate taxes. However, your employees and anybody who works on the site will be subject to all the federal, local, and state tax.
Absolutely.
First
Darn.
Okay. Second question is, if the property for the co-locations is developed privately, okay, they will be paying real estate taxes on that. Okay. Part B to that question is, will they be a tenant of Cornell, or will Cornell have the ability to sell or sublease that property?
I'm trying to remember
Maybe
this.
that's parties.
I believe it starts out as tenants of Cornell. Cornell does have a purchase option later on, and when that starts getting, if that starts getting exercised, then it would apply to the co-locations also. And it's technically a payment in lieu of taxes that's equivalent to what taxes would be because it is city-owned.
Jeffrey?
It's just more of a statement in response to Kathy's statement earlier, but I mean, with all due respect, the community here does understand the complexity of the project itself, but also understand that it is also a project that you all have undertaken. It's one in which, quite frankly, it's a little frustrating as a community member here, as a person who's on the island, to not have you be able to understand that we as a community are feeling that we should not be penalized for a deal that you chose to undertake. And that's simply where those statements are coming from both Ellen and from everyone else. It's not meant to be anything else beyond that in the sense of trying to at least keep the status quo, if not improve the community with you coming in. And we identify the difficulties of it, but please understand we don't dismiss the difficulties of it. We understand where we're coming from as well.
Jeff, I do, and I appreciate you saying that, and I totally understand that, and I'm not trying to in any way say that we feel badly about this. So we understand the questions that have been raised here and at the other forums have been excellent and thoughtful, and I know we're trying to dismiss them.
Yeah, I had a question. Just on this real estate, and I don't want to second guess the deal, but I echo what my fellow board members have said. You are undertaking and you're expending a lot of money, but you would not be doing it if it was not in your cost-benefit analysis to your advantage. I have no problem with that, but something strikes me viscerally. There is a free rider thing going on here that I am having a hard time wrestling with, and I don't expect an answer tonight because real estate transactions are, in this city, in a project of this size and complexity, very difficult. But I would like to know next week, if you can, a little more about this, because it does strike me as somewhat of a free rider issue here for the private, corporate. And Jeff, I'm glad you brought up the point, 670,000 square feet for the private or commercial aspect. I'm not second guessing that at all, that's fine, I understand. Somebody's got to, put the bill for that, but just if we can have some kind of answer or something a little more detailed about how this works, because I'm very concerned about a free rider issue, especially because you are getting the entire parcel for free, and commercial entities, while they will be paying rent to you, they are still getting an inherent benefit by having this prime real estate right here, not having to pay for that land.
And I understand your concern, Jeff's concern, and other people's. Let me just tell you where we are in the process, and it's one of those probably that are going to feel a little bit unsatisfactory answers. We're in the middle of the process of testing the viability of what we're trying to do by 2017 in this case, which is to look to some private developers to help us build this. Many universities do it. So where we are is we've actually gone out to the market with RFPs and said, tell us what you can do and will this work? And we won't know until middle of January what the market tells us back, whether these things even look financially viable. The market might tell us that this is a struggle right now and it won't work. So I'd be happy to try and answer whatever questions you have next week.
Okay. Lawrence?
Yes. When we have your attorney here, I think the question is very simple. About the real estate taxes, is any private development going to have to pay real estate taxes to the city, or are they going to be included in your non-tax release? Not tax on the
Right, and I think we answered that. The agreement with the city has the private developers paying real estate taxes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, Barbara.
Just one more, I'm sorry for my ignorance. But the taxes that they will pay go to the city. They don't
The city not to reopen, that's part of the community concern. I do hear the concerns, folks. You know, that doesn't mean our answers are always exactly what, yeah, we're hearing the concerns.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions from board members? So,
The city makes no contribution to, the city and state make no contribution to the maintenance of Roosevelt Island. Is that correct?
Correct.
Some state money.
there has to be state, there has to be some, isn't there some, Maria? Yeah, by the rents, basically, that covers. Is that 100%? By the rents? All right, okay.
There's a line item in the state budget that's zero since 1996.
Right.
When Governor Pataki zeroed out the money coming to Roosevelt Island.
Okay, so it's zero in the state budget that's allocated. Right, okay, good, thanks for that answer. You had your hand up earlier on something, was it?
No, I said that you complied with,
What?
holding the meetings and.
Assembly of Governors, right, okay, well, I appreciate that, all right, thank you very much. Okay, Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there certainly could be a movement to get those funds designated. I mean, look, years ago we had OTB. Those funds were supposed to be designated for education. We all know what happened there. Everything goes into general funds. But that's not to stop everybody from making a real effort to request and, you know, in the strongest possible way, with whatever representation we can have, that these funds get designated to the island.
All right, well, so anyway, any other questions? Yes, Jeffrey.
So, in the study, I'm sorry, when will you find results from your research to co-development and viability? When do you expect those results to be?
We'll know in the spring where we are with that.
So, in other words, when we set forth in the draft, or in your DEIS for phase 1, as it currently stands, the 100,000 square feet for commercial co-location, who will be developing that space at?
So, the requirement with the city has us by 2017 building up to 300,000 square feet, of which 200,000 square feet will be academic. And so we will build a minimum of 300,000 square feet. How that's configured, that's part of what we're going to explore in the next few months. As you know, the DEIS studies reasonable worst case scenario, which builds up to 790,000 square feet in phase 1. So we could potentially be between 300 and 790 in phase 1.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Meeting is adjourned, and we'll be back to you on what